Okay, so if you grew up hearing the story of Balaam and his talking donkey, you probably remember it as this kind of bizarre Sunday school fable, right? Well, today, in this explainer, we are completely reframing that narrative. We're looking at the historical and textual evidence to uncover what is actually one of the most theologically concentrated passages in ancient texts. It is literally a thrilling, ancient cosmic heist. It's a story that operates right at the intersection of divine jurisdictions, the actual architecture of the unseen realm, and, well, the ruinous nature of professional greed.
To really grasp this heist, we got to start with Moabite King Balak. The Israelites are camped right on his borders. They are a vast, victorious people, and Balak, he is terrified. Now you might be wondering, why on earth would an ancient king hire a sorcerer instead of just building up his army? Well, in the ancient Near East, military outcomes weren't just about swords and shields. They were entirely tied to divine backing. So Balak's strategy wasn't just some silly superstition. For his time, it made perfect sense. He wanted to bring in a professional to sabotage Israel's divine support from the inside out. To him, hiring a diviner was a strategic weapon, honestly as rational as mobilizing his infantry.
All right, let's dive into Section 1, the professional diviner, Balaam in the ancient Near East. You see, Balaam wasn't just some cartoon villain in a storybook. He was a highly sought-after, totally legitimate professional diviner. He had a verified regional reputation. And get this, we actually have incredible extra-biblical proof backing this up. Back in 1967, Dutch archaeologists made this absolutely stunning discovery near the Jabbok and Jordan rivers. They unearthed these plaster fragments dating all the way back to around 840 BC. When they finally pieced them together, the inscription opened with the name Balaam, son of Beor. This Dear Allah discovery is a huge deal because it confirms Balaam was a real historical figure running a recognized, highly professional divination business.
What's really fascinating here is the sheer technical vocabulary Balaam used. El Elyon, Shaddai, Elohim. When Balaam speaks in the biblical text, he is deploying the exact shared vocabulary of the ancient Near Eastern divine council world. He wasn't just throwing words around or guessing. The guy trafficked in the divine realm for a living. He knew exactly how to address the cosmic assembly, and frankly, his clients knew he had genuine access to the unseen world.
Which brings us to Section 2, the cosmic map and its structural impossibility.
So this brings us to the wild reason why Balak's incredibly expensive commission to curse Israel was totally doomed before the ink was even dry. It all comes down to ancient cosmic geography. According to Deuteronomy 32, there was this primordial distribution of the nations of the earth. Basically, the nations were divided up as allotments among divine beings, or the sons of God. Think of it like a giant map, where every nation was assigned to its own divine administrator. This is the structural system King Balak assumed he was working within, and naturally, he assumed it applied to Israel too.
And right there is our core conflict. Yes, the other nations were administered by these allotted divine beings. But Israel? Israel had a categorically different status. They were Yahweh's direct, unmediated personal inheritance. They were completely outside that entire allotment framework. So the absolutely crucial takeaway here is that no divine council member could be leveraged, paid off, or manipulated into cursing them. Balak was basically trying to buy a backdoor code to a system that structurally didn't even exist.
Moving right along to Section 3, the blind seer and the perceptual inversion.
So God actually permits Balaam to travel to Moab, but there's a pretty massive catch. God dispatches the angel of YHWH, who is essentially the highest-ranking divine council executive, to act as a literal roadblock, standing right in his path with a drawn sword. And here we get these famous three escalating constrictions. First, Balaam's loyal donkey sees the angel and immediately veers off into a field. Then the path narrows and the poor donkey ends up crushing Balaam's foot against a wall, just trying to squeeze past the angel. Finally, with literally no room left to maneuver, the donkey just collapses entirely. And what does Balaam do? He viciously beats the animal every single time, completely blind to the unseen realm, violently pressing back against him.
The profound irony in all of this is captured perfectly in Balaam's very own professional boast. The guy literally calls himself one whose eyes are open, who sees the vision of the Almighty. But come on, he is completely oblivious to the divine executive standing right in front of his face with a drawn sword. His greed has essentially morphed into this extreme spiritual blindness that all his fancy, professional vocabulary simply cannot compensate for.
Then, God does something amazing. He actually opens the donkey's mouth, giving her speech. The supposedly visionary, greedy prophet is completely blind, while the dumb beast sees the divine world perfectly. This proves unequivocally that prophetic authority is absolutely not an asset owned by the prophet.
No, it comes entirely from divine initiative. It has nothing to do with the prophet's professional skill or some elaborate ritual preparation. The prophet's mouth just isn't his own personal property to go and sell to the highest bidder.
Despite this massive warning, Balaam pushes ahead. Let's look at Section 4, the unstoppable prophecy and weaponizing the curse.
So King Balak takes Balaam to 3 different high places, and they throw just massive resources at this problem. We are talking 7 altars, bulls, and rams at each site. It's like the ultimate ancient ritual machinery, but it fails completely. Instead of curses, God forcibly places 4 unstoppable oracles into Balaam's mouth. First, he publicly acknowledges the categorical impossibility of the curse. Second, he declares God's immutability, saying basically no spell or divination is going to work against Jacob. Third, he pronounces this super exuberant blessing directly from the Spirit. And finally, totally unprompted, he predicts a future cosmic king coming out of Israel. The attempted curse is entirely transformed into a cosmic blessing.
Let's zoom in on that 4th unprompted oracle for a second. Balaam says, "I see him, but not now. A star shall come out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel." Guys, this is a stunning messianic prophecy coming from a foreign diviner. And what's absolutely incredible is that early church figures like Justin Martyr and Origen actually connected this specific oracle to the very star the Magi followed to Bethlehem centuries later. Because Balaam's tradition was heavily preserved in the East, this exact oracle might have literally been the instrument that led Gentile wisdom seekers straight to the incarnate Son of God. How wild is that?
But the story takes a really dark, devastating turn in Section 5, the fatal loophole, seduction at Baal Peor. Balaam realizes he's hit a brick wall. He absolutely cannot curse Israel from the outside, so he engineers a really sinister plot to destroy them from the inside. The strategy? He advises Balak to use sexual idolatry. By seducing the Israelites into worshiping Baal of Peor, they would essentially be stepping out of Yahweh's direct protection and right into the domain of a different divine being. It was a voluntary territorial jurisdiction transfer. If they couldn't be breached by external pressure, well, they could be tricked into abandoning their cover all by themselves. And the human cost of this fatal loophole was absolutely staggering. 24,000 Israelites died in the resulting plague. To put that into perspective, this wasn't just some random public health event. It was a direct, devastating consequence of crossing a cosmic jurisdiction line. And the worst part? It was all engineered by the exact same man who just finished blessing them from the mountaintops.
Which brings us to the final chapter of this heist, Section 6, the cost of greed, and the legacy of Balaam.
Let's look at how this echoes into the New Testament, because the apostles certainly did not forget what Balaam did. Balaam was eventually killed by the swords of the very Israelites he tried to destroy, and he left behind this permanent canonical warning. Peter condemns the madness of the prophet, this rational irrationality driven entirely by the love of money. Jude warns against the error of Balaam, a moral deviation where you basically just abandon your integrity for a paycheck. And John, over in Revelation, warns of the doctrine of Balaam, that exact strategy of jurisdictional seduction that leads people astray. Balaam officially becomes the ultimate scriptural type for corrupting spiritual gifts for financial gain.
So as we wrap up this explainer, we really have to look the legacy left behind here. The story of Balaam isn't just some ancient artifact about a talking donkey. It is a profound, exposing look into the architecture of the unseen world and, honestly, into human failing. It leaves us with a really provocative question. Are we still tempted to commodify truth for personal gain today? That ancient, ruinous temptation to sell out our integrity for profit, to try and manipulate what is sacred just for our own advantage, it remains a massive danger in our modern world. It's a legacy we absolutely must recognize and a trap we've got to actively resist.